schedule, he went to work for Ned Jarrett. Together, they celebrated a second NASCAR title. His first start as a
Serious Speedway legends, pioneers in the world of motorsports. Here once again is Dave Moody.
Born August 26, 1934 in Roanoke, Virginia, as one of 13 children, he grew up in a farming family, but soon found himself captivated by the rough-and-tumble world of stock car racing. He got his start as a mechanic, traveling the NASCAR circuit and winning the 1960 Grand National Championship with Rex White. When White scaled back his schedule, he went to work for Ned Jarrett. Together, they celebrated a second NASCAR title. His first start as a Grand National driver came in 1964 at Old Dominion Speedway in Manassas, Virginia, where he finished 19th and pocketed a whopping $100 for his efforts. He captured Rookie of the Year honors in '66 with a second-place finish in the championship chase. And while his resume shows only 2 wins at NASCAR's top level, he was a perennial title contender, finishing in the top 10 in points 10 times between 1966 and 1977. The highlight of his career came in August of 1972 when he outran Ramo Stott by a single car length to win the Talladega 500. His career continues to this day with frequent starts on the ARCA circuit, and a year ago he came within just a few laps of qualifying for the Daytona 500 at the ripe old age of 72. One of the great gentlemen in all of NASCAR. Welcome to Serious Speedway Legends, James Hylton. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure on my end. I enjoy your talking about radio and keeping this sport going, and I'm with you 100%.
I want to start with you, James, at the beginning. One of 13 children. Holy cow, where did you fall on the list?
I was probably about fifth from the end.
So you had plenty of company from day one then, huh?
Oh, yeah, I had plenty of big brothers that kind of kept me straight, that's for sure.
Yours was a farm family, as I mentioned. How did you first get exposed to stock car racing?
Well, being raised on a farm in the early days up in Roanoke, Virginia, on a place called Back Creek. Can't even think here. Back Creek. It was strictly farming. My father worked for the highway department and farmed on the side to keep us all those kids fed, and that was the beginning of learning how to race, was on tractors. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing we had to race, running about 3 to 5 mile an hour down through the fields, and learned a lot. Had to work on them when they broke down, and then on the hillsides of Virginia, you had to make some pretty drastic moves to keep from sliding off the side of a hill. So I base that on my race car training, because it taught me to respect a piece of machinery. This thing can hurt you. And I learned how to drive sideways on those mountainsides, and then just as I got older and finally got me a real race car, I learned how to run these things sideways.
There wasn't a lot of extra money around the house, I'm sure, not with 13 children. Not easy to scrape together the price of a ticket once you decided that you wanted to go and check out this racing deal, was it?
Well, no, it wasn't any money to speak of, but in the summer, we sell farm produce on the side of the road and stuff, and I guess what really got me in racing was living in Mount Pleasant, Virginia, and there was a gentleman there running a auto shop, and he was all our young kids' hero. We'd go up there and watch him work on cars and stuff, and it was through his mechanical part of it that really got me to, showing me how to really build a car. So I just built it, at night after farming, and sometimes that was 11, 12 o'clock at night, and on weekends, and it took me till I was 18 years old before I could actually had a car I could go race. And just by, working out of the junkyards and all the extra time, and then some of my friends started helping me a little bit, and first thing I know, I had me a race car.
Did a little racing around home for sure, and did all right at it, but you really got involved, at least as far as NASCAR is concerned, in the late 50s, and you got started really as a mechanic working with Rex White. How did that come about?
that was quite a coincidence. You know, I've heard people say, "Well, I was born to race," or this is what I was supposed to be. But I always wanted to race something ever since I ever heard anything with an engine to crank up. I learned how to drive on an actual T-model Ford that had the 3 pedals in it, and it just escalated from there. It's just it's amazing what happened. That Rex White got his training from a guy named Frankie Snyder up in Lambertville, New Jersey, and then through circumstances, I moved in across the street down there in Tampa, Florida, across the street from Frankie Snyder. And, of course, he'd come down in the winter to race, and I had my car down there at that time. And we got to helping each other, and I got to running with Frankie Snyder and winning some races and going with him to the races and learning the ropes. And Rex, find out later, Rex White had been taught under Frankie Snyder at an earlier day, and I met Rex down there. He came down to Tampa, Florida, and went racing with Snyder and myself locally. And after Rex, he stayed down there pretty much the whole winter, and then springtime came. Rex gave me a call down there, wanted to know if I wanted to go Grand National racing, and of course I did, and give him a call back, and Rex is really Frankie Snyder and Rex White is what really got me into it.
It was basically a 3-man team, as I understand it. You, Rex himself, and Louis Clements did it all. Built the cars, built the engines, built the transmissions, all from scratch. Rummaged all your parts out of the junkyard. You really had to be a bit of a jack of all trades to be a racer in those days, didn't you?
That's exactly right. That's where the farm adventure came into play, because on the farm, if your plow broke down or your tractor or anything, you had to fix it. Wasn't go hiring a mechanic to come in there. Just something that the farmers had to take care of their own equipment, and that's how I learned my mechanical trade. And then when I went to work for Rex White, the first thing I told him, I had just won a feature race in Tampa on my own, and I told Rex, I said, I'm going to be a race car driver. I'm not. I'll work as a mechanic, but let it be understood, I'm going to be a race car driver, and that's what I want to do. So Rex promised to help me do that, and took me a whole lot longer than what I wanted to. It took me 5 years as a mechanic working for Rex, Ned Jarrett, Dick Hutcherson. Mm-hmm. But on the 5th year, I made up a final decision. If I can't get me a race car and go racing, then I'm going to just quit the sport altogether. And as things played out, a friend of mine in Tampa, Florida, backed me on buying a car from Cotton Owens, David Pearson dirt car, and then that's the 66, went on to win Rookie of the Year, right, and was second in the points, and that record still stands. There's no other rookie in NASCAR that ever got higher than second in points.
Right. Precisely right. It seems to me like if there was a such thing as a stock car racing master's degree, you probably earned it, working with Rex White, with Frankie Snyder, who is very well remembered up in the northeast corner of this United States, perhaps less so elsewhere, but one of the great racers of that day. Working with some of the guys that you worked from and learning from some of them, by the time you did get ready to build your own cars and start driving yourself, you knew everything you needed to know.
Well, I did. That was what propelled me right from the start. Back though, the days, that was the earlier days to where you couldn't go buy a race car set up ready to go, but everybody's building their own race cars. And I had a mechanical experience, 5 years of college there that a lot of these guys didn't have, and I knew how to do it all. I could build my own engines, my gears, transmissions. Didn't have to outhouse anything. And then I had a big jump on chassis, learning from Rex White and Frank Snyder. They were both real good chassis men, and my cars always handled. And when you take one car like I did in '66, that's what I came in second with in the points. I ran that one car and one engine, won everything. You know, I had some extra gears, of course, and whatever, but I run that same engine, same car the entire season. And, of course, I overhauled the engine. I run it 5 races and then rebuild it. But that's a feat that I've never heard anybody else do, run one car all year and almost win a championship. So I'm proud of that.
As you should be, no doubt about it. 1960, when you were running with Rex, the team won 26 races and the NASCAR Grand National Championship. I'm interested in what that entailed, James. How many races did you run? How many miles were covered? It had to be a tough way to make a living.
It was. You lived on the road all the time, lived in your vehicle. Rex nominated me as his truck hauler, I guess, the race hauler. Mm-hmm. I towed the car to all the racetracks when I worked for Rex. And I don't remember exactly how many races that were been too long that with Rex, but I remember back in when I started driving, and we was going up north to what they call a northern tour, running third of a mile, half mile, running dirt tracks up in Fonda and all that. There were 52 races we run one year.
Wow!
And you know that you tell the Cup guys now, hey, you got to run 52 races. You know, it'd be a ride, I guess.
Yeah, there'd be a heck of a ride, especially if you told them that there's no interstate highways anymore and you have to haul your own equipment up and down the road on 2-laners.
Exactly right. Wow. And we didn't worry about, having motels in advance or getting flying in an airplane and stuff. That's just something that was unheard of.
It's none of my business, but I'm going to ask you anyway. How much money did you make for being 1/3 of the national championship team in 1960?
A salary, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I was making big money with Rex White. My big salary was $55 a week, and I had a wife and a young baby then, James Jr. And that. Needless to say, it was cornbread and beans because, that's one thing got me so riled up. And, I wasn't complaining to Rex. I was doing what I wanted to do. And I'd do anything to get the race. But then what really upset me was when I went to Darlington with Rex, working on the car, and I didn't have money to get my wife in to the race. NASCAR only gave two tickets, freebies to the driver and to the owner,
right.
And the rest of the crew would just, do for themselves. Well, that got me upset right off the get-go, and that's one thing I got into it with NASCAR right off the get-go. But long story short, after getting out of line a little bit, as far as NASCAR is concerned, wound up with seven passes for family passes, and then I was able to take my wife to the races with me. And of course, Rex and I now are probably better friends than we were when we first started. I just talked to him today, as a matter of fact. And when we do interviews together, he'll say, "Yeah, I remember I started off on that big salary. I always said $50, but no, he said it was $55. So we survived, and that was the important part."
That's it. How difficult was it, or was it even possible to be much of a family man when you're on the road for 80 or whatever number of races it was a year? It seemed like you wouldn't get home a lot, that's for sure.
Well, that's a fact. And any marriage that can survive that kind of treatment is a wonder in itself. Of course, mine didn't. After 30 years of marriage, I wound up divorced. But it was, I blame it on racing because, you're on the road. You never hardly know where you're going to be at from one day to the next. And it's the wives at home is the ones that really suffer because you got nobody to help them around the house. I know my wife raised my son. I've seen very little of him, and I'm fortunate now in the later days. He went on to graduate from Wofford College here in Spartanburg on the dean's list. Went on to be a teacher. Then he wasn't really happy with that. He wanted to be racing. And so now, last year when I made my Cup effort, he was my crew chief, did a heck of a job, and he works for me now full time. So this last century, part of the century here, I've got him full time. So wife raised him the first part, and I get to enjoy him the rest of the last part. So it worked out real good.
Making up for lost time, no doubt about it. Let's take a quick break. We'll come back and continue our conversation with this week's Sirius Speedway legend, James Hylton, right after this.
Now, hear former MVP Bryce Harper as you've never heard him before.
We're in 6th grade. My buddy goes, he's one of the best players in the country right now.
It's the A-Dinner with Bryce Harper. Join Ryan Spilborghs as he sits down with the Nationals outfielder, one-on-one, ball player to ball player.
Playing against Derek Jeter for the first time was unbelievable.
The A-Dinner with Bryce Harper, now available on demand with the SiriusXM app. Search Bryce Harper.
I just want to play the game the right way, and that's how it was, my whole life.
Welcome back to Sirius Speedway, and this week's Sirius Speedway legend, the one and only James Hylton. James, we've gone through the Rex White era, for lack of a better term, but at about the 1964 point, he decided he was going to scale back his driving a little bit, but you kept right on going, became the crew chief for Ned Jarrett and the Bondi Long Ford team. Success didn't take long to follow you either. You won 14 races, finished second in points that year. Was working with Ned Jarrett different than working with Rex White?
Yeah, they were quite a different driver. Rex was more mechanical oriented than Ned. Ned just concentrated on his driving, and he was a great driver and won a lot of races. An excellent dirt track racer. And Rex was more. He understood chassis, and Rex made some. Guys, I'm trying to think of the word. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is Rex had some innovation on some chassis updating NASCAR racing. For instance, what they call the jack screws that raises that you can adjust your springs within these cars. Rex was the one that did that. But Ned was a good driver, a gentleman driver. He never got any tussles with any of the other drivers. He just drove a good hard race, and he could have went on. I think I ain't no thinking about it. Ned could have went on to win more races, but he got to the point he wanted to retire while he was on top, and he did, so I admire him for that.
They called him Gentleman Ned, and rightly so. He still is one of the great gentlemen of this sport. But that didn't mean that he wasn't intense and very, very competitive in his way, too, right?
Well, he's kind of like Superman. When he put that suit on and that helmet, he was Superman at that point. That was a different Ned, and he would run the wheels off a car.
July 8th, 1964. Graduated from NASCAR college, as it were, and decided it was time. Made your debut as a Grand National driver in the Old Dominion 400 at Old Dominion Speedway in Virginia. Finished 19th, made a smacking $100 for your deal, which I guess was 2 weeks' pay, as we've now learned. So even while you continued to work as one of the top crewmen and crew chiefs in the sport, it never left your head that your goal was to be a driver.
No, it is, as hard as I worked as a mechanic and towing somebody else's race car up the road for them, I knew that I was going to drive me a race car somehow, some way. And I was serious about it in '65. If that car hadn't become available to me, I would have quit and would probably went on to be a plumber or something, because I had 5 years of frustration, more or less, wanting to drive. It's painful to stand there and watch somebody else drive a car when you know that you feel that you know you can do it, but you just don't have an opportunity to do it, and it's very disheartening. And I can feel for some of these young mechanics now that works for me, and you know, they just stand there yearning, wanting to drive so bad that they taste it, but the sport is so big now to the point it costs so much money, and you can't go back to that I can work on a car and survive type thing, because now you can go to BSR, Hutch and Pagan, speed shops where you can actually buy a turnkey car, and you can buy the part. You know, your engine's ready to go from different individuals, and in other words, if you got the money, you can buy every part you need for the race car, and it's ready to race. Where you did, when I started, you didn't have that advantage. And I didn't have that money either, so you know, I guess it works out either way.
You won 12 races and the Grand National Championship with Ned in 1965, but in 66, you decided that was it. You're going to be a driver, strapped yourself in full-time, and to say the least, it went pretty well. Won your first career pole at Starlight Speedway in Monroe, North Carolina. At the end of it all, finished second in points to David Pearson, who won the title driving for Cotton Owens, and you were named Rookie of the Year, as you've mentioned. Not much doubt at that point, was there, that you'd been right all along, that you could make it as a driver at the upper levels of this sport?
Well, I guess it surprised the racing people, you know, the people I've been working with and everything. I hadn't drove a race car other than that Manassas, Virginia, and then Ned let me drive one time, start a car at Watkins Glen. And that was all racing anybody around Pierre had ever seen me do. I didn't even run any local races, and just worked on race cars. And I know when I showed up at Riverside, California, which was the first race for NASCAR in the start of the season, bought that dirt car and went to the road race with it. And this team after team would come over to me and say, Hylton, you crazy. I said, this is road racing. You can't start off on a road race. And that was when NASCAR was, well, I guess relaxed attitude, whatever. If you showed up with a race car, you could go race.
Right.
And anyway, I had confidence in what I was doing, but what they didn't know was back in the bootlegging days, up around those mountains of Virginia, around Roanoke and all that area, little old narrow 2-lane roads, I had tons of practice on that, running 100-mile-an-hour plus and downshifting and using brakes, and just off-field training. And I wasn't a bit concerned about that road course, and then I think I'm accurate about it. I think I qualified 12th and finished 9th in the race, just having a good time. But all my competitors were concerned about me, you know, go out there and try to do a road race, and they'd never seen me race. But after that, they went to Daytona was the next race and finished third there at Daytona. So after that, didn't anybody question whether I could drive or not.
I want to make sure I understand you correctly. Are you telling us, Mr. Hylton, that Junior Johnson may not have had a corner on the market for running moonshine down back roads in the moonlight?
Well, I don't. Junior Johnson was one of the main players. There's no doubt about that. But there was other people that had to make a living also.
I understand. That's enough said, I guess, for sure. Were you, in the early days of your driving career, were you kind of the driver and the crew chief all in one?
Yes. Back then we didn't have crew chiefs. We just all worked on the car. We didn't nobody call anybody chief. Everybody worked on the cars. And then as racing got more expensive and more sophisticated, then you got to have a crew chief. And then it went on from there. You had to have today's, you got to have a crew chief, you got to have a car chief, and then you got to have a manager. And this is where they skyrocketed at cost of racing.
You finished second in points again in 1967, this time second to Richard Petty, driving Dodges. 46 top 5 finishes in 87 races in 1966 and 67 combined. Great consistency, amazing consistency, but no wins. Was that frustrating for you, or did you still feel like to some degree you were paying your dues a bit?
Well, what I should have figured out some way was somebody had captured David Pearson and Richard Petty and locked them up for those 2 years. And then that daggone Richard Petty come back again in 73 when I was second in points again. And you know, you're running against the world's best driver at the point, and they all had you know, factor back in, and it was most years. I was going to win races at a place up in Virginia. I had made my last pit stop, was outrunning the field without a problem, and somebody on the pit stop, they left the gas cap loose. I'm saying you had a regular old gas cap, right. And on the pit stop, they left the gas cap loose. Had to come under the green. There's several, probably as many as 4 races I should have won in 66 by gas cap being left off or the car falling off a jack when they made a pit stop, and knowing you can win and you wind up not winning, it's frustrating. It bothers me even to today. And but when you're operating like I was, all volunteer workers, and you know, they didn't know all that pit stop strategy like they know now. You just got a bunch of guys together and said, we'll go help you this week. And they haven't changed tires or gassed the car or done anything. You said, well, who was you're looking for a gas man, you're looking for the biggest guy you could find and can handle that gas can, and you put it all together, and sometimes you got lucky. And at Islip, New York, I had Bobby Allison covered. We was great friends, worked together on the road. Bobby had totaled out his race car race before. That one was on one of them 50 race tours. And I think Bobby sat on a pole in his Chevelle. But at any rate, he had totaled that car out. I took my car was in good shape, so I put all my crew on his car and got his car going. And I had, with 7 laps to go, I had him beat a half straightaway. Well, no way I could lose that race. Mm-hmm. And run out of gas. And the reason I ran out of gas is I was helping Bobby fix his car. And then we're sitting on the starting line there at Islip, and they had about a 20-degree banking on it, and it was leaking gas. And waiting for the race to start, and NASCAR said they had to stop that leak. Well, no way we could stop the leak, so we just drained out a couple gallons of gas until it stopped dripping, and then they let me race. Well, right there, if I'd have worked on my own car, I'd have won that race. It's just one of those circumstances. I wasn't supposed to win a race, and I didn't. So it's just something that gnaws at you after, just if as President Clinton says, if is a big word.
It certainly is. James Hylton, our guest this week, Sirius Speedway legend. Back with more with James after this.
Adrenaline, drama, a fight to the last second. SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90.
Hell yeah, 3 to go, come on.
Happy Hours with Kevin Harvick and Matt Yoakum.
You still have to have experience somewhere to be successful at this whole thing, because you have to guide the ship. The experience has to be somewhere, something that you can't buy, you can't move people around. You cannot replace winning with anything that you do as far as morale, momentum, or anything that you do in racing. There is nothing better than a win, and it doesn't matter how you get it.
Happy Hours with Kevin Harvick and Matt Yoakum.
Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio Channel 90.
Full Ride on College Sports Nation.
How long can you go at the Jim Harbaugh speed? How long before you start to say no and then he says, I want something else? We also know because of his competitive zeal, having not finished the job at the 49ers, somewhere in him is burning desire to win the Super Bowl.
Full Ride with Neuheisel and Childers. Weekdays at 10 a.m. Eastern on SiriusXM College Sports Nation, Channel 84.
This one's for you, baby!
And on the SiriusXM app.
The Morning Drive with Mike Bagley and Pete Pistone.
The driver of the number 22 Shell Pennzoil Ford, Joey Logano.
When you have a win like the one you had yesterday that's encumbered, should NASCAR even count the win at all?
Penalties are bad for everybody, and it's bad for the sport, it's bad for the team, it's bad for the drivers, it's bad for everybody. But I don't know if you can just completely wash it out. They've made it not count, believe me. I know this. The only thing we got out of it is a trophy and some cool pictures.
Weekdays, 7 to 11 a.m. Eastern. SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, Channel 90.
This is Joel Myers, and you never know who will take flight above the rim. Garon Butler, an NBA champion.
I would love to play in the Houston Rockets system because it seems like, obviously, James Harden player usage and him having the ball and distributing it and being a willing passer at that point position, you're going to get a lot of opportunities because he's a willing passer. Coming down there, like it's an equal opportunity type offense.
Take flight above the rim, weekdays from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern on Sirius 207, XM86, and on your phone or tablet with the Sirius XM app.
Race fans, it's your man, Guy Fieri.
Hey, this is Larry the Cable Guy.
Get her done. You're listening to the home of NASCAR. Sirius XM NASCAR Radio.
We ain't talking formula.
Channel 90.
Welcome back to Sirius Speedway and this week's Sirius Speedway Legends conversation with James Hylton. James, I want to jump ahead to 1968 now. You decided that it was time not only to be a driver, but to be an owner driver. Was it just a situation where you'd driven for a few guys and felt like you could do a better job yourself?
Well, no, it was back in, I started looking at what was happening to NASCAR. The money was starting to flow in, and I've been driving, working and driving all that time. What I was trying to do was bring in younger drivers to try to, entice a sponsor. Well, evidently I could drive pretty good, but I wasn't worth a flip at finding sponsorship.
Right.
And I tried a Canadian driver, Australian driver, German driver, and for whatever reason, it didn't seem like I figured NASCAR would want to help on that, bringing in a foreign driver. And, like I run Trevor Boris from Canada for a year and a half. Mm-hmm. And he actually was second in the Rookie of the Year point standing. So we had, and pretty good racer, but could not get no help. And it's ironic how it changes now. Here in NASCAR is now, they won't Formula F1 drivers, Canadians, Europeans, Spanish, black drivers. They won't diversify, but back in the early days, they weren't interested.
Finally won for the first time as a driver, March 1st, 1970, at the Richmond 500, driving your now familiar number 48. It was a long time coming, obviously, against the odds, racing against guys that almost all the time had better resources than you did. It had to be a great feeling to finally win a Grand National race. What do you remember about that day, James?
The biggest thing I remember about it was, that was 500 laps without power steering. And it was, I just bought a Ford from home in Moody, had been in Dodges up to that point. Didn't have time to go over the chassis. I picked it up at home in Moody in Charlotte, went straight to Richmond. Ralph Moody set the car up. He said, the car will win. All you got to do is get in it. And that's actually all the time we had. We got up there, I think we qualified third. And got the race underway. And Richard Petty, there's that daggone Richard Petty again, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Richard sat on a pole, of course, and we run there for a while, and he had ignition problem. Lost some laps in the pits. Well, I took the lead, and got keeping in mind this thing's 500 laps, and back then no power steering. You had to get after the horse,
Mm-hmm.
And I just figured that, he'd every so often he'd lap me, make up a lap. And I kept driving. So anyway, I wound up winning the race by 15 seconds. Wow. And to kind of give you an idea how tough that race was for me, was beat him by 15 seconds and just knowing at least anything happened at all, we're going to lose. We finished the third place. The third place finisher was 5 laps behind myself and Petty. So it wasn't just riding around kind of deal. And I had gloves on, but I couldn't get. The race was over. I couldn't get my gloves off my hands. I'd actually wore through the gloves, blistered my hands. They'd bled, re-blistered to the point that I just had like raw meat, and that's how hard I tried. But I enjoyed that race, winning that race more than I did Talladega. And as to this day, when Richard and I get together, he said, "One more lap, I'd have had you." Yeah, there you yeah, but you didn't.
But you did.
And but in a joking way. But I think Richard hated losing that race as much as I enjoyed winning it, because when you beat, he had trouble, but he had a better car than I did to start with, and he had a factory car, and I won that on just not giving up, and it was a great car, handled good, but come find out, what they have, the steering box on those cars, they had, this car had ran on a major speedway with a different steering box, and just made the car steer hard. I had what they had to be in the business know, like caster and camber. This thing had a ton of caster in it, and it was like a Mack truck, but it did the job, and that's a memory I'll never forget.
Top 10 in points 10 times between 1966 and 1977. You are the model of consistency. Running as well as you did, it's a wonderful thing, but were you making any money at it, or just getting on to the next race a lot of the time?
It was making money. One part that they were making money big time. One year I took in over $100,000, but that was good money back in those days. But the thing of the bottom line was footing the whole bill off of the purse, and every cent that I made went back into the race car. It had to keep it running. I think my career I've took in over almost $1.5 million. But how can you run that many races on $1.5 million?
Probably cost you 2.5, didn't it?
Probably, yeah. And it was just one of them feed. That thing was a money machine. It just eat every bit of money that you could hand it. But we did it, as you say, we did it the hard way. If I'd give up and said, well, I'm not making any money, I can't make any money, go get a job. But the drive I had when I was on a farm on the side of a hill has not left me, even as today. I want to do it more right now than I ever did. And, I look at it and say, well, come to your sense, that's not normal. But that's what I want to do, and as long as I can do it, as long as I can got my health to where that I can do this thing, I'm not going to be out there. I'm not going to be out there. I know, I got my own limitation. When I get out there and I can't hardly turn the steering wheel and I can't see the car in front of me, and I got to have people help me in and out of the car, I'm not that stupid. But
right.
As long as I can get in that thing and spin my wheels, I'm gonna do it till I've had my thrill.
So it's not
I
just.
know that day's coming, and it's coming quickly. I figure if I can qualify, I'm still trying to run a COT car this year somewhere. This John Carter E&M Motorsports is backing me. Going to have me a car at Daytona for the 4th of July racing, and I'm determined to be the oldest qualifier in a Cup race, which, saying and doing is two different things, but I got an organization that's EM Motorsports behind me. John Carter, he is we clicked And thinking on the same train of thought that he wants to see me do it, and I want to do it. So I think I get it done. And if I do get it done, then this is definitely will be. I'll hang it up after this year, and I may hang it up anyway because there's got to be a limitation there somewhere. I'm 73 years old now. In August, I'll be 74, so, I'm not going to be an idiot about it and say, well, I'm going to drive till I'm 75. But I got a goal I'm trying to achieve, and that's what I'm after.
So it's not so much that you're trying to make a point. It's not like you're being some kind of a soldier for senior citizens. It's not that you just can't think of anything else worthwhile to do. You just still have that hunger at age 73, 74 to get out there and strap in and compete to this day.
That's exactly right, and that's what it's all about. And I do appreciate my race fans, my senior. You can't believe how many seniors that are, encourage me. And every day we get, wanting postcards and sending encouragement along. It's, I think from the feedback and all, it showed that. Showing people that you can be my age and still enjoy life and do what you want to do, not what somebody else wants you to do. Go retire and hide. But I think what the overall program is an awful lot of knowledge that this country's throwing away in the older generation that goes hides in a corner or go to assisted living home and go fishing, that kind of stuff. To get our age, you've seen an awful lot of the world go by, and sure, you got these younger generation come along that are probably 100 times smarter than we ever thought about being, but you got this older generation that put this country together. And I think we're wasting an awful lot of natural resources by trying to hurry up, get on out of here. We'll put a younger guy in here. And I'm not against the younger guys. That's what the world's all about. But I think we're throwing away a generation of knowledge that we don't need to throw away.
Amen. I couldn't agree with you more. James, it occurs to me that you are like a human bridge between 3 or 4 different eras of NASCAR racing. Does it ever occur to you just how much you have seen and how much this sport has changed on your watch?
Well, it's hard to describe. When I worked for Rex White, I made many trips to Detroit, Michigan with a tow truck, bringing back 2 Chevrolets at the time, get them right off the showroom, not the showroom, at the assembly line at General Motors, and bring them down to the shop here in South Carolina and start dismantling these cars. And I'm talking about drive them off the trailer and disassemble them and get them stripped naked and then start making a race car. And then we actually, 2 of those Chevrolets in about 61 or 2, we built 2 up, did that, stripped them, rebuilt them, actually made race cars out of them and drove them to Phoenix, Arizona to Mesa Proving Ground out there for General Motors and tested that, what's called a mystery engine back in the day. The Chevrolet had that mystery engine. And I've seen all that happening, and then to go on, I've seen these cars in. They got to the point that you could cut the bottom of the frame off of the chip, and then they finally NASCAR gave in to what's called the clip, the front end of where the suspension was. You could cut that off and make your own suspension, and it's from every step of the way until where it is now. You can have $1 million in these race cars now. It's like a Hendricks or somebody. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if there's not over $1 million in these cars, and they're not stock cars anymore. They're racing machines. They're in when you got Formula One drivers driving them, you're in the class of Formula One, and it's a money thing, and it's went from 0 to the stars. You know, that's the way I see it.
No doubt about it. Final question for you here, James. Actually, more of a statement than a question, I get. You are so warmly embraced by everyone in the NASCAR garage this year, these days. A year ago, you wanted to qualify for the Daytona 500. Richard Childress leased you a race car to do it, state-of-the-art race car. So many people come forward wishing you luck and offering you help in one way or another. It occurs to me, and I guess it's probably occurred to you too, that you may not have won as many races as Richard Petty or David Pearson or some other people, but I got to tell you, very few of them seem to have made as many friends along the way as you have.
Well, you're right about that. That's the only way I survived from day one was friendship. And having the friends I had all the way across the country. You know, we go from here to California, take maybe one or two people, and then make friends out there that wound up with a pit crew that remember the days, and they're even contact with me today. You remember this, and you remember that. And I feel like I'm sure we've got some enemies. Everybody makes an enemy or two, but just a pleasure to walk through the garage area, even any of the Busch series or the Cup series. People take time out of their work and business to shake my hand and show real friendship, not just what I'm trying to say, just to be politically correct. And after that run last year, even the high upper in NASCAR, I think shows a different respect right now. They were scared to death, and I don't blame them. You know, the man my age out there trying to do that, but they found out that I could do it and did do it, and it put a whole new look on NASCAR. And I think NASCAR now is showing. I noticed on their racing ads and stuff they're showing the older drivers, they're showing the older cars, and putting a little more emphasis on the older guys, because for a long time there that the Ned Jarrett's and the Rex Whites and the Fonny Flocks and you name it. You came to NASCAR, you raced, and then you just go away, disappear. Nobody ever heard of them again. But now they're showing these older drivers. I take my hat off NASCAR for that.
Amen.
They're on the right move now. These guys are ones that made racing. It wasn't, I didn't make racing. I was just there at a time where I could see a lot of things going on. But you take the Buck Bakers and the Fonny Flocks and the Keith Kafer, who really organized real race teams where he started hauling race cars on trucks and had people putting on uniforms and looking like racers. And Fireball Roberts, I think he was the first one to put on a jumpsuit instead of just showing up in your street clothes and racing. And those are the guys that made this sport. In 1948 out here in the cow pasture. And,
indeed.
Then NASCAR is starting to show, hey, let the world know there were other people that was in this business other than just a 19-year-old superstar that happens to wind up and get in the best racing machine that money can build. Absolutely. With all the technology and engineering that you can muster. And
we're
goes
happy
out
to
and wins races.
That's right.
Nothing against that, understand, but give some thanks to them, the Fonny Flocks and the Fireball Roberts. That's where I'm at.
We're happy to put you on that list as well. James, it's been a genuine pleasure spending time with you today. We appreciate your time very much indeed, and we thank you for being with us.
Thank you, and it's my pleasure. Thank you very, very much for you're doing just what I asked for right there, is to let know that there was other people in racing instead of a superstar.
That's James Harvey Hylton, this week's Sirius Speedway legend.